Baltimore Ravens are poised for a bounce back against the Cleveland Browns in week number 2, but there are some things they need to do in order to secure a win. We talk about that so much more in a game day edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We're a 5-day-a-week plus more daily Ravens podcast. And here on this game day, we're going to be diving into everything this Ravens team has to do to win against the Browns in week 2 and bounce back, which I think they're poised to bounce back. We'll talk about some keys to victory. We'll look at both sides, Ravens offense versus Browns defense, Browns offense versus Ravens defense, getting to some final predictions and a lot more. I want to remind everyone that today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward Mazda Move and Be Moved. Let's dive right on into it here. Happy game day, first of all, to everybody. And if you're going down to the stadium for the 30th season celebration or just to watch the team play and hopefully watch the Ravens pull out a win, hopefully you have fun. Hopefully it's a great atmosphere, although it always is at M&T Bank Stadium and should be a good time, of course, assuming the Ravens win. If not, they don't, then we'll have different conversations. But first off, we're going to dive into why the Ravens, in my opinion, are poised for a bounce back against the Browns. Now, we know that AFC North battles, and this doesn't just go for the Ravens, it goes for every team. It can get a little crazy. We saw last year the Ravens ended up losing to Cleveland in Cleveland. Now, this is in Baltimore, but I think that for me, the big thing that I take away is that and maybe it's not necessarily like, in-depth, like analytic type deal, but there's no way the Ravens can have this happen 2 years in a row, right? I mean, it's lining up to be very parallel with what happened at the start of last season, where the Ravens lose to the team that knocked them out of the playoffs, and then the next week they lose to a team that they pretty handily should beat. Now, this team is better, in my opinion, on paper than last year's team was for the Ravens. But of course, you have to play the games. And we saw some pretty big weaknesses last week for the Ravens in particular within their secondary, within their pass rush. Obviously, that's not including the offense and the defense got very soft with their play calling as the game went on in the fourth quarter. But I just think that the message has been sent. Now, in my opinion, the message has been sent too many times. Like we've had this conversation about, the Ravens keeping their foot up on the gas and this, that, and the other. But I truly think that with the way that the Ravens want to play football, and I want to say this about the Browns defense, first of all, and we'll get to this a little bit more in the second part of the show. Browns defense played a heck of a game against the Bengals in week number 1. Now, they ended up losing, but holding that Bengals offense to just 2 yards per carry and 3.7 yards per pass is a really big feat because, again, that's supposed to be the strength of the Bengals, right? And they held the Bengals to 7 second-half yards. So, again, the Ravens are going to have to show up and play this game. My opinion is that they do. And I think that it has been very clear this week that the Ravens have taken this game to heart. They're really upset about what happened. And if you honestly, what kind of clued me in, and it's not just this one particular instance, but if you went and watched the Kyle Van Noy has this show, it's not a podcast, he says. It's a show, so we call it the Kyle Van Noy Show. He was beyond himself. And he talked about it during his media availability, right? Sometimes not the 24-hour rule, it's the 48-hour rule. I think these guys are going to play with a vengeance in week number 2, and sometimes that's what it takes. I think the Ravens, after that first drive and, first couple drives where the Bills, all right, it's going to be this type of game. No, it wasn't. The Ravens, they put their foot on the gas. They said, we're not letting this happen. And for the majority of the game, unfortunately, not all of it, but for the majority of the game, they went out there and they performed. And that, to me, is going to be the biggest message right here. Lamar Jackson saying that they need to keep their foot on the gas. Obviously, John Harbaugh talking about how they're going to evaluate that. And again, at a certain point, does it become, with all of these blown leads and the same story over and over again, does it become a bit tired? Yeah, it does. But, I just think that week 1, and this honestly, it goes back to the preseason a little bit, where oh, the Ravens, they started off slow on their first drive on offense and defense, but then they really pulled it together. I'm not really attributing what happened on Sunday night to preseason rust. I've seen some people talk about it, and look, I understand if that's the case, and I do think there's a little bit that could be said about that. But hey, this is week 2. Hopefully, you're going to get a better game from Jair Alexander. Hopefully, you're going to get a better game from the pass rush. And look, here's one thing too: the Bills' offensive line, just speaking of the pass rush, is really, really good. One of the top in the league. Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, et cetera, et cetera. They have good players on that O-line. Not that the Browns don't, but in my opinion, I think that Bills offensive line is a lot tougher to go up against than the Ravens offensive, or than the Browns offensive line, excuse me. So I think that that's a really big factor, where sometimes it's not about like how good you are. Sometimes it's about how good your opponent is. And I just think the Browns overall, we know they're a worse team than Buffalo is. And I think for me, another big thing is that, yes, even though Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard are not going to play in this game, I think that the Ravens found their spots pretty effectively. And while I think the Browns' run defense and just the players they like, the star power that Myles Garrett has, almost no team can replicate that, right? And it's not just Myles Garrett on that D-line. Obviously, they invested a first-round pick in Mason Graham. They are trying to get good seasons here from Jerome Baker and Devin Bush, who have been cast off from other teams. In the secondary, you have good players. I mean, look, Denzel Ward's a heck of a corner. Greg Newsome has shown that he can be a good player. Grant Delpit, if he is words are one thing, his play, though, like he's a solid player overall. Those are the types of players that the Ravens are going to have to deal with. Now, in Buffalo, you had to deal with guys like Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, et cetera, et cetera. But in my opinion, like, number one role here is stop Myles Garrett. Now, I'm going to put my trust. Maybe it's a mistake, but I'm going to do it, and that's why I think the Ravens are poised for a bounce back. I'm going to put my trust in the Ravens offensive line to hold Myles Garrett to a pedestrian game. And we've seen the Ravens offensive line do that in the past, right? We've seen Aaron Donald be held basically statless against this Ravens offensive line. Now, it's a different offensive line than it was back when Aaron Donald played, right? Obviously, you're putting a lot of trust in Roger Rosengard. Are they going to run stunts and match up Garrett on Falele? Those are some things you have to worry about. But, man, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to put my trust in the Ravens offensive line. I don't think they played terribly in that Buffalo game. I just think, again, the problem is that they lose very loudly, and you're playing a player in Myles Garrett where there are going to be a couple of loud losses in this game. It is like these offensive linemen are going to lose loudly at times in this game. And it's something that I guess is just like the price of doing business with playing Myles Garrett. But that's a big thing to me. And I think that the bounce back is not necessarily going to come just from the offensive line. This is a team effort. And I think what we're going to see is a lot better situational awareness, both from the players and the coaches. Because, again, like we've talked about the coaching staff a lot. We've talked about John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, and Zach Orr, but it truly is a team effort. I want to keep hammering that point home, where it's not just on the coaches, it's not just on the players. I've said this over and over and over again if you've been listening to me on this show. It is about everybody. John Harbaugh's not going out there and in that Buffalo game trying to sack Josh Allen or trying to pick up a first down. John Harbaugh's not doing that. At some point, it does come down to the execution, but other times it comes down to the coaching. Now, how big of a piece of the blame pie do guys get, as I've said, that's a different conversation. But you have the 30th season celebration. You have Joe Flacco coming back for the first time since 2018. You have the comments that Jerry Jeudy and Grant Delpit have made. If they lose this game, it would be an absolute catastrophe. In my opinion, even more of a catastrophe than it was last season, because this would be the second straight year you do that. And I can't bring myself to believe it that they actually would. I mean, look, you can talk about some of the games that they've dropped to inferior teams. You can talk about the fourth quarter lack of closing, lack of instinct there to get the job done. Yeah, it's all there. It's all right in front of us. But, at some point, like, this is put up or shut up time for this team. We saw them get out of that 0-2 rut last season. I don't want this team to be there again. They don't want to be there again. And I think that motivation factor, along with some other things, my prediction is they'll get on, and once this game is over, they'll have come out victorious. And coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about some of those keys to victory and some matchups to watch for the Ravens offense versus the Browns defense, as well as vice versa. So stay tuned. A lot coming around this game day edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, Zay Flowers, in my opinion, delivered in a huge way in that Buffalo game in week one. Career high in receiving yards. He was in the right spots at the right time, was making plays, getting yards after the catch. He was incredible. When the pressure was on, Zay Flowers came through. There was no hesitation, no delay. And look, if you've been watching Zay Flowers week to week over these last couple of years, this performance was not a fluke. Zay Flowers well on his way to becoming a great receiver in this league. Zay Flowers has been on a streak for the course of his career. And just like Zay Flowers living for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. And you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. And look at this Ravens and Browns matchup over on FanDuel for week 2. Ravens 11.5-point home favorites in this one. It's the home opener for Baltimore. Obviously, a lot of storylines here. Look, the Browns, they have a lot of talent. They obviously took the Bengals to the wire in week 1. If you feel like they're going to be that road underdog that wins, then you can go over on FanDuel. But to me, I like the Ravens in this one. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on the Sunday game day edition. Happy game day. Again, if you're going down to the stadium to enjoy the game, the celebration of the Ravens' 30th season, hopefully it's a great time. We'll have you covered with all the content you need, whether you're going to the stadium or if you're not and just watching the game from home, from maybe you're going to a friend's house, wherever. These game day episodes are fun to get everybody hyped up for the game, but during game day. So today we're going to be back with a watch along at 1 p.m. where we dive into every single play. We react to it live. It was really fun in week 1. Obviously, the result wasn't, but we had a lot of people stop by. So if you're looking for something to do or you want to have the game up on one screen and me up on the other for the Ravens reaction, be sure you do that over here on Locked On Ravens. We do that every week now. And then also right after the watch along, we will have the instant reaction episode. After the instant reaction, we'll have the Locked On Ravens squad show with myself, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail, and Sam Njoku. And of course, the regular main show will be on just Monday, right? We'll have the Monday show coming to you right after. Now, let's get into it. Some keys to victory, some matchups to watch. I honestly think there are a lot. Now, for the Ravens, we do have the elevations for both teams. For the Ravens, they elevated again. Tight end Zaire Mitchell-Patton from the practice squad, so he'll be available for tomorrow's game. In my opinion, played really well for them in week number 1. Filled in for Patrick Ricard very nicely. I was very pleased with what he had to do there. I mean, look, it's not easy following up a player like Patrick Ricard, or at least trying to, replicate what he can do, right? It's like there's only one Project Pat, but in my opinion, did about as good as you could do. So I was really pleased with what he had to bring to the table. And then for the Browns, the move that they announced was they activated Quinshon Judkins, their rookie second-round running back. So he will be available for this game. So 2 teams looking to pick up a big first win. This would, if the Browns lost this one and the Ravens would push their divisional record to 0-2 through 2 weeks of the season, which, look, I know they're not trying to have happen. And for the Ravens, they most certainly do not want to go to 0-2. Now, a couple of things about the Ravens. Let's just go over some basic stats first here. They are the best offense in the league right now. They're the best passing offense in the league at 9.2 yards per attempt. They're the best rushing offense in the league at 8.2 yards per attempt. That is just a ridiculous number. Obviously, defensively, it's not as good. They are 27th in pass defense, giving up 8.3 yards per attempt. 14th in run defense at 3.5. Although 3.5 is really not that bad of a number. It's only week 1, so as the weeks go on, things will start to even out a little more. And I expect the Ravens to be a top 5 run defense again this year. That wasn't a huge issue to me. It's just, again, a theme with this team. When they have bad plays, those bad plays are very, very loud. They're the worst defense in the league. They're the worst first down defense in the league, worst pass defense in the league in terms of total yards. They're the 24th ranked red zone defense right now, 19th ranked third down defense. So there's a lot that they have to do now, especially against a guy like Joe Flacco, who, in my opinion, is kind of like Jameis Winston light when it comes to how you play him. You want to force him into making bad throws. And Jameis is obviously the biggest, boom or bust quarterback, it feels like, where if he's on, he's pretty unstoppable. If he's off, he's throwing interceptions left and right. It is what it is there. But for Joe, it's kind of the same thing. And look, we know this from watching Joe in Baltimore for so many years. He will absolutely light you up if you let him. But you force him into some bad throws, you take away some options, and sometimes he starts to force some things, or he tries to chuck the ball down the field. And for a Ravens defense, that one of the biggest goals here is trying to force turnovers, give the ball back to your offense, which they did not do in that Buffalo game in week 1. I think this is a big opportunity to gain some momentum there. So I think it's a really big option for them, or at least an opportunity for Baltimore, if they can make sure that run game is not effective. The Browns, by the way, against the Bengals, they did not do well in the run game. They are the second worst run offense in the league right now at 2 yards per attempt. Now, maybe Judkins changes some of that, but it was a Dylan Sampson show for the Browns. And not that they necessarily ran a bunch. I mean, Sampson led the team with 12 carries for 29 yards. Jerome Ford was the next highest guy with the attempts with 6 for only 8 yards there. But again, that Bengals defense to me is not as, look, they're a terrible defense in my opinion. I think the Ravens defense can take away the Browns run game. I think you have to force Joe Flacco to chuck the ball around. And again, make guys like Jerry Jeudy beat you, Cedric Tillman beat you, and make Jerry Jeudy back up his comments. And it's the same thing with Grant Delpit for the Ravens on the offensive side of the ball. Derrick Henry, I want to see a couple of those stiff arms, right? I want to see that. But to me, I think it starts with the defense shutting down the Browns offense. And I think that, again, the Browns offense and the Ravens offense, it's two very different units. And I said this on the bonus episode we had yesterday. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out. We had a lot of good conversations on there as well. But the Ravens offense to me is super high floor and super high ceiling, right? Even when they're not playing their best, even if they play against the better defense or a good defense, they're going to still probably put up 20 points on a bad day, maybe 16 on a bad, their worst day, it feels like. But when they get going and they get off to the races and they really hit that momentum hard, like we saw against the Bills, they'll put up 40 with ease. And this team, this offense, honestly, the defense, the whole entire organization is very vibes-based, where it does kind of spiral pretty quickly for them if things get out of hand, but it goes the same way the other way too, where if things start going really well, I think that the team feeds off of each other. For the Browns offense, I think they're low floor, low ceiling, where even on their best day, are they putting up 40 points? No, they're not putting up 40 points. Now, I hope that doesn't come back to bite me and the Browns put up 40 points on the Ravens. That would be disgusting. And I'd own it if it happened, but I don't see that Joe Flacco-led offense putting up 40 points on not just this Ravens defense, but any defense, in my opinion. So the way the Browns win this game is if they make the Ravens have their worst offensive game and they have one of their best offensive games. That to me is what kind of has to happen here. That's how they keep pace in this game. And that certainly is on the table. I'm not saying that's never going to happen. We saw it happen last year in a sense. But I just think that the Ravens have the advantage there offensively, and defensively, I really want to see the pass rush step up. I need to see it. I do. We can blame the secondary all we want to, and they certainly have their fair share of it. I get it. But to me, the pass rush and the secondary, it goes hand in hand. And right now, the Ravens getting 1 sack on Josh Allen, yeah, that's tough. But you know who's sitting back there in week 2? It is Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is not Josh Allen. If you get early pressure, and we saw the Ravens get early pressure on Josh Allen at points throughout the game on Sunday night. But Josh Allen is one of the best escape artists in the league alongside Lamar Jackson. And so it's going to be tough because it's not just you have to win your rep against the offensive line and get in the backfield and boom, the quarterback's down. For Josh, it's, okay, now I have to go chase him. Now I have to go bring him down. For Joe, he's not going anywhere. Joe's not going anywhere. He's very immobile. You can, if you win quickly and you get into that offensive backfield and those routes haven't developed or Joe's going through his progressions, you can get him down pretty easily. So that's why I expect to bounce back from this pass rush. they just need something to jumpstart him. And part of that is the secondary covering for a long time, right? You can't let those short throws, intermediate throws that develop after like a second or two, you can't let that happen either. So that to me is going to be a really, really big key to this game. And look, I think that the Ravens, they just have to win this one because I think it will set them up very nicely because this is the one quote unquote easy game, and no game is easy in the NFL. We know that, but I'm talking about how the stat we've gone over forever on this show. 5 of the Ravens' first 6 matchups are against division winners from last season. This is the one game in that 6-week stretch where that is not the case. You have a tough road ahead here for Baltimore. If you drop this game, you're putting yourself in a bad spot, much like you did last season. And again, they got out of that last year, but you don't want to keep playing with fire like that. Just go out there, get the job done. I expect them to, but we actually have to see it for a full 60 minutes to feel confident in it because even if they're up, again, 15 in the fourth quarter, that was not enough in week number 1. Coming up, though, in the final part of the show, we'll get to some final predictions in this one. I'll do some bold ones as well. We'll get a little spicy here on Locked On Ravens. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming your way on the show. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Lamar Jackson. After the game against Buffalo, obviously really tough loss for the Ravens. He played really well in that game too, by the way. He was making plays, keeping his team in it, or at least keeping them ahead until obviously the collapse happened. But after a loss like that, sometimes it can be tough to kind of face the moment, but Lamar did that in a really good way. And essentially the message was move forward, move away from this game and move forward to the next one. And I think that that positive mindset is what fans should have, what the team should have, what the organization should have. And I think that moment is what keeps everyone moving forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still rocking out with here, rounding out this game day edition of the show. Again, be here for the watch along today. I would really appreciate that as we have a great community already. We have so many great communities on Locked On Ravens. We obviously have, for those who watch the main show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m.ers, tune into all of our content. The everydayers really appreciate you as always. For those who are just watching the watch alongs, appreciate that community. We got the instant reaction community and obviously the Locked On Ravens squad show community. We have social media communities, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can follow me over there at CashRecord34. We have the subtext community. And the beautiful thing about it all is that we have a lot of people in a lot of different Locked On Ravens communities here. You know, it's not just one person in one community and that's it. Now we have people spanning all the communities, multiple different communities. And I absolutely love everything we've built here on the show. And I cannot wait to continue moving forward here on Locked On Ravens. So tell a friend, tell a family member, if they want some daily Ravens coverage and content, send them over our way. We'll have them covered, much like we have you covered on Locked On Ravens. Well, let's get to some final predictions, some bold predictions. All right, my first bold prediction is that Mike Green gets how bold? We'll go semi-bold, and then we'll go crazy at the end. Mike Green gets 2 sacks in this game. Gets his first NFL sack, and his second sack, he forces a fumble. We'll go specific with Mike Green. 2 sacks and a forced fumble for Mike Green in this game. I think that Nate Wiggins notches an interception. I think that Jair Alexander notches his first Ravens interception. We'll go 2 interceptions for Joe Flacco. I think that the Ravens offense, I'm not going to say they're going to put up 40 again, but I do think that this will be a much more controlled game here where it could just be dominating time of possession. And a lot of that does go into game flow. Like the Bills dominated time of possession against the Ravens in that week 1 game because they held a lot of it came from the fourth quarter, but that, they held the ball. They sustained drives and, should have been the other way around. Unfortunately, it was not. I think the Ravens will play a better game in this one. You know what? I think we might see a couple of trick plays from top, maybe one trick play. And I don't mean just like a jet sweep to Zay Flowers. I'm talking like maybe a flea flicker. Are we James Prochet? Are we doing? No, maybe not James Prochet, but I think a trick play that could potentially result in big yardage. I think Justice Hill rushes for a touchdown in this one. That's not necessarily super bold, but I think they're going to try to utilize Justice a little bit more in this game. I think Derek will have a huge game in this one. And you know what? I think the Ravens, maybe it's bold. I think the Ravens will hold Jerry Jeudy to 0 catches. 0. And then he'll have to answer questions after the game about the secondary, and that'll be a whole experience. But I truly think Baltimore is going to be okay in this one. Obviously, I don't know that at this point. Like, the game has to be played. I can say all I want. They're going to be okay. And at the end of the 60 minutes, maybe they're not, right? That's the beauty of sports is you got to play the games. Doesn't matter what happens on paper. I do expect it to be very physical. I do expect it to be one of those classic AFC North games. Again, I don't expect necessarily a massive Ravens blowout, but there are plenty of paths where we get there. There are plenty of paths where a Jackson 5 ends up being what happens in this game. And maybe that's another bold prediction is the Ravens get a Jackson 5 from Lamar. And in that case, yes, then we're talking about a big Ravens blowout. But I've said 27-13, I think, from the majority. I might switch to 30-13, which is still a pretty big Ravens blowout, but it's not like 40-7 or anything. Like those big, like, Miami games or, like the Detroit game they had at M&T a while ago, the Seattle game they had at M&T, I think it was at 2023, both those games. I think it'll be 30 to maybe I'll give the Browns another maybe I'll go 30-16. So they win by 2 touchdowns. I'm going to say, and maybe it's a little more of a blowout than the box score actually indicates. Maybe there's a late couple points put on the board by Cleveland, and that's how it happens. But, special teams also going to be really important here. The Browns had a rough go of it with their kicker. I thought Tyler Lute played well personally, in my opinion. I get he had the missed extra point and the kickoff that went out of bounds, but he was put in some tough spots by that offense, and he delivered. His first kick being 50+ yards, I thought set a tone. Obviously, drilled the other one as well. Like, I thought in those moments he was really, really good, and I'm honestly very happy for him, and I think he can build off of that really, really well. But sometimes it is special teams, right? Like that big return for the Bills to open the game for them on the special team side of it. Like, that's stuff that can matter and set your offense up and honestly flip the field. And that's all stuff that you kind of have to keep in mind. So it's not just about offense and defense. Special teams plays a factor. Obviously, coaching as well, going to be massive here. But if they can stop Myles Garrett, they can stop the Browns run game, make the Browns offense one-dimensional, I think that they will be okay. And obviously, third down is going to be another big one too here. So I feel good about this game, maybe better than I should based off what happened in week 1. But look, this is still a great roster, still a good football team, but they just have to play like it for a full 60 minutes. If they do, I think they'll be all right. If they don't, then anything honestly can happen. That's all I have for you here today on this Game Day edition of Locked on Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Of course, we'll be back here a little later. We'll be back at 1 p.m. We'll be doing the watch along, reacting to every single play. Then after that, the instant reaction show. And after that, the Locked on Ravens squad show. So much game day content coming your way. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked on Ravens.